Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hanging Out with Howie. I have two very special guests tonight. DJ Rachel is with me, and we're going to be discussing her polite rant she did a few weeks ago. And along with her, the one and only Lou Paris from Paris Creative, and a new platform for your planning, Q, which is really, really cool. So, Rachel, you did what was called a polite rant. I thought it was very well done, and I thought it was worthy of a topic because it really isn't about a brand. As a matter of fact, I saw today, everybody knows who Jake Jacobson is. He showed his setup, and he's using a MacBook Pro and an Asus as a backup, two laptops. So, Rachel,
nothing wrong with that.
Take it away. Yeah, I mean, so Rachel, take it away. Give us your synopsis of your polite rant.
Sure. So first, I want to say the beauty and magic of this job is that there are a million ways to get this job done. There is no right or wrong how to do it as long as you are on time, you love what you do, your clients are happy, and you're ethical and have integrity in what you do. But in terms of gear and all that, there's no right or wrong. So that is what I think really excites me about this industry, is that you can get creative. You can make your Franken booths. You can take this brand, that brand, these wires, that wires, and just create whatever you need to make it work for you. So that's why I don't want to turn this into a battle of the brands, because I think there's a ton of great products out there that serve DJs. And it really boils down to finding stuff that matches your style and your workflow. And what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. And that's why I think it's great to have shows like this and dialogue like this, and have, you know, platforms and chat rooms. And I know Lou and I belong to a little private messenger group where we just kind of send memes and chat and bounce ideas off of each other. And it's a wonderful collaborative thing. Which kind of brings me to, you know, how we got to this topic tonight. So as you know, I do a lot of gig logs. I'm a pretty open book, and I just like to give a behind the scenes look at kind of what I do, how I do it, and why I do it. And in this one particular video, I decided to address a specific question that I kept getting in a lot of my posts. It was, Rach, why do you have two laptops set up side by side at your events? And I thought it was kind of an obvious answer, but apparently it wasn't. So I simply took the time to explain, well, this is my main laptop, but I have a carbon copy backup literally right next to it, ready to go, plugged in with a mirrored hard drive. So if laptop A fails, I hit a button on my controller and I am up and running in literally seconds. And I feel that when you are a DJ doing weddings and you're charging a certain, price point and offering kind of an expectation, I feel that the client deserves nothing less than perfection. And whatever you need to do to make that happen, that's for you to decide. But that was my personal workflow. So then from there, I kind of just, I read all comments and I really try to respond to everyone that, tunes into my videos and engages with my content, just because I appreciate them being there and checking it out. And there were several comments that were just kind of really like took me back for a second. It was like, I almost couldn't believe what they were saying. Some were kind of rude. It just was word. Okay. We'll call a spade a spade.
I'll call it rude.
It's the industry. Let's not bat words here. It's straight up.
Yeah, they were kind of rude and just honestly really unintelligent and extremely ignorant. So that's when I kind of decided to take my gig log and do a little rant at the end to kind of address some of these comments, because I really am big on putting good information out there that might be opinion based, but at least it's logical. You might not agree with everything, but at least what I'm trying to propose is supposed to give some semblance of reasoning and logic here. So pretty much what they said was, a couple comments, was, well, if you weren't using Windows-based laptops, you wouldn't need two of them. So I'm just going to let that kind of stew for a second. So if you weren't using Windows-based laptops, you wouldn't need a second one. That was kind of the one that really triggered me. And this is where you can put like that trigger GIF in there where you're like, You know what I mean? I was like, how could they even say something like that? And then there was also, the real DJs use MacBook Pros. And then it kind of gone from there. Well, MacBook makes better products, and just all these overgeneralized statements that literally aren't backed by any fact or logic or anything that's actually concrete. It's all opinion, super fan based propaganda. And I was like, okay, so we're going to have a direct conversation about this. So pretty much my message was, I don't care what you use, whether it's Mac, it's PC, Serato, Virtual DJ. I don't care if it's a Android tablet, an iPad, you do you. Denon, Pioneer, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you need a plan B. And if you are so ignorant to have such an overconfidence in a particular brand, you are doing yourself and your client a major disservice, because with electronics, anything can go wrong with any brand, with any piece of gear at any time. Period. Dot. The end. And I will do hashtag come at me, bro, because no one is going to convince me otherwise. Now, I will say price only has a little bit to do with it. I think there is something to be said for quality made products, right? But you get to a certain point and a price point where if you spend $2,000 on an Asus gaming computer or $2,000 on a MacBook Pro, guess what? Either one has the potential to have something go wrong. And I've been very transparent about this throughout my career. I actually have a gig log where I was literally in the middle of a nightclub, peak hour. It was pretty much the stroke of midnight. My Razer laptop, it was a brand new laptop. I think I only had the thing for about a month and a half. Really specced out, a fantastic gaming computer, and I got the blue screen of death. I was an unfortunate soul that had the motherboard completely fail, because Razer kind of gives you these diagnostic updates of every stage your laptop goes through with repair. And they pretty much said, hey, that was completely our bad. We're really sorry. We're just going to send you a new laptop. We don't know what happened, but your motherboard just failed. Now, if I didn't have my Denon MCX 8000, which is a standalone unit, it would have been a really bad night. So I didn't have two laptops at that gig. I had a standalone option. So again, it doesn't matter what you do. You just need a backup option. Now, to kind of elaborate on this a little bit more, so I think it's obvious you need a backup. So first message is, stop being an idiot. Don't be so ignorant to think that your brand can't fail, because it's just not the truth. But I want to take it a step farther. So the second part of my rant was not only having a backup, but your backup better be good enough for you to do what you would normally be able to do without compromise. And yes. I hear a lot of DJs say, oh, I have my phone, or I have a tablet with a bunch of music, or I have a couple of 30-minute mixes, so I could reboot or get up and running. And I think that's a wonderful solution for a temporary fix, meaning if you have to plug in your secondary laptop, or you have to go, run out to your car to go get your backup mixer or something like that, that's fine. But if someone is paying you $3,000, $5,000, whatever it is to do a wedding, do you really think you're going to do the customer justice by doing an entire wedding reception off of a cell phone? I guess it's better than having dead silence. But to me, a backup isn't just about having the show go on. It's about having the same show go on and not compromising the performance at all. And I don't think DJs put enough thought into that. They just think, all right, if I get dead silent, I'm just going to hit, play on Spotify, and this is how we're going to roll. And is that really a $3,000 wedding service? Not in my opinion. So I think we need to kind of rethink our plan Bs. You not only have to be comfortable with it, but be competent and skillful with whatever it is that you're using. End rant.
All right. Well, you brought up some great points there. And I think the three of us actually use, PC and Mac. And Lou, I know that you're a Mac guy, but your day job, you're doing. Tell us a little bit about that.
I've supported every platform you can think of, Unix, Linux, Mac, PC, the works. And Rachel really spoke eloquently on this. Is like, no matter the price point, no matter the situation, anything can and will fail. and it will fail at the worst time. And it does not matter.
Well, not according to one of the comments there, you know.
And this is an issue that's kind of permeated DJ. And you know what? I see it in photography as well, because I peek the photography groups every now and then. And, if you don't have a new Sony and blah, 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 that will never fail. You don't need 2 card slot. This is this mentality of my brand is superior, whether it's Pioneer, whether it's Denon, whether it's whatever, Rain and Mac, PC, Asus, it doesn't matter. People have this brand loyalty and will, fight tooth and nail to think that it's perfection. And there's just no such thing. Technology is not perfect, period, end of discussion. And I've been lucky enough, like Rachel, it's like every solution that I've built in to my, ever since I started my company, I also come at it with an IT background. I literally wrote the book on the FBI and Department of Justice backup and recovery solutions, literal novels on this, because you have to think of not just plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D. And a great example of this, I had my first wedding of 2020, one of only 4, and we had a derecho come through, really, really powerful storm, got some really nasty winds, some thunder, the power blip for a second. We're going along for about 30 minutes, and then the power just died. Their generator died, and we were running on that generator the whole time. And it turned out that there was a tree blocking the entranceway to the venue itself. So nobody could get in and out to go get parts to service the generator. So next thing you know, I have a battery backup. So I'm running off my battery backup initially. And then, we got about, I want to say, an hour and 10 minutes or an hour, 20 minutes or so. And we're running out of power at that point. So it's like, okay, here's solution C now. We're really starting to dive into where can we do things. And, at that point, we changed the timeline around so we can make sure we had first dance done, any of the toasts, everything that would have been a requirement, make sure all those check marks were made, right off the bat, right after dinner. And then I switched to my plan D at that point, which was running, virtual DJ, just laptop DJing at that point without my controller to save power and to run off my Maui 5 Goes. And I was already running my Maui 5 Goes as I normally do for a ceremony and cocktail anyway. So that, even they were partially drained, but we got through the night. And it was this constant hunt for solution. It's all about finding those solutions. And it's just like Rachel said, I don't care if you get paid $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, whatever that amount is, there's an expectation of quality that you have to bring in there. You just can't throw your hands and walk away. And honestly, if you're just throwing a pre-mix and just being done with it, I think you're failing, the client in that regard. It is up to you to have built in your systems, whether it's an emergency play to, swap out equipment. That's personally what I do. I have my main laptop up. I use a Rain 1 right now. If something on that fails, I can play off my Soundcraft digital mixer for like 1 or 2 songs if I need, as I'm swapping out pieces of equipment. And I can swap out nearly every single piece of equipment that I bring in there just to make sure that I have a direct replacement for everything. And hopefully, if that ever happens, nobody's the wiser during that whole process.
Exactly. Your story about powering down and keep the essentials going kind of reminds me of that, Apollo 11, where they just had the bare necessities. Bare necessities.
Sometimes
we need air.
And no joke, I was like literally like calculating in my head, how long could I run off this, and this? And luckily in this case, because it was COVID, we're just starting to come out of COVID a little bit. So it was a very small wedding. So I knew that I could run one Maui 5 Go for each part of the night for the rest of the night. And lo and behold, I ran out of battery on one, but I flipped right over to my next one. And again, it's just this mentality of knowing what's going on, knowing if the next thing fails, what's your next solution? You always have to have your next step in mind. Otherwise, you're failing the customer and you're failing yourself as a brand.
I think the important takeaway from what I've gathered from the two of you tonight, because this is, to help the newcomers that are really quite impressionable. And when someone makes an absolute, I don't like absolutes.
Okay.
You know, they just don't work out. As you've said, that everything will fail eventually. And, you know, for the newcomers, try to stay away from those sort of absolute comments and do your due diligence. There's a lot of people out there, such as Lou and Rachel and a whole host of other people. You know, have your plan A, plan B, plan C. And Rachel, I love that comment that, listen, they paid for a $3,000 to $5,000 event.
Experience, right? The experience for it.
Don't do that on a phone. I do the same thing. I have carbon copies of my laptops, and then I have a plan C and a plan D. Thankfully, I haven't had to use them, but you know, I have had failures like Lou said, anything, and I've had that with lighting. But then, as you saw at Beret, somebody actually came up and said, "Why do you have two iPads open?" I said, "That's how I'm controlling the lights." And they go, "But what's with the second one?" I said, "If this goes down, I can engage that second one in a second, and nobody will be the wiser. They're going to think, okay, because I set my lights to last, meaning the last command that they had, okay, everything's held blue for a second or two. Then I start up the second laptop and the show continues." Nobody knew. I actually showed somebody. I said, "Here, watch what happens. I'm gonna cause a failure with this laptop or with this iPad." And the colors froze, and I engaged the second iPad, and the movements continued. And they're like, "Wow, nobody knew but the person I was showing that to." And
that's where it needs to be. That's where, I mean, and that's not to say that we will always have a 100% uninterruptible event. You know, there's always something that can happen, but
exactly,
you should have at least something that's as close as possible. Just like me, you know, 2 clone hard drives. These things get
exactly
every week. 2 thumb drives, all the essentials, every song of the night, plus my master list, like my floor fillers and all that. Those are cloned. 2 laptops. So it's just like, you know, they're relatively small investments too. You know, you do not have to go overboard. Yes, having a second laptop may be a little pricey, but you don't have to have, you know, the top of the line laptop. You can have a somewhat older. My gig laptop actually is a little bit less powerful than my daily laptop, which happens to be my backup laptop. As long as you have 2 in the cycle, and it could be different brands. Like I said, so I know some people that do run Mac and an Asus or a Dell or something like that. It doesn't matter in the end, as long as it works in your workflow.
Yeah.
And you can perform up to the expectation of the client. So just to be clear, so I don't get any backlash, there's nothing wrong with having a phone or an iPad with backup music and pre-made mixes and stuff. But I feel that those options should allow you time to transition. If you had to replace God knows what, it shouldn't be the final solution, in my opinion, at least for something like a wedding and something a little bit more high caliber than that. Even my club example, if I didn't have the backup, could you imagine me DJing peak hour at a club from Spotify? Like, just no, I would have been absolutely mortified with it, kind of a thing. So, you know, the music stopped. I kind of looked around, like it was like what happened? The power go out? Did the speaker? Because club speakers, you know, everyone's redlining and like beating those systems up. So I didn't even realize it was me at first. And then once I realized it, I was like, oh, you know what? Flip that switch on engine. Everyone did the boo, you know, but then I actually have, believe it or not, this is how prepared I am. On my backup, especially with like the club situation, I have a song queued up that it's like a cold start. So it doesn't, so like if a song just cuts out and it's awkward, it almost makes it seem more intentional. Like it's one of those songs that's just like, and you could just automatically pick it back up. You also have to be intentional in what you have prepared in case something goes wrong. Because imagine you have your backup, it goes down, you're like, oh my God, I got to find the playlist. I got to find the flow. No, you need it like ready to go. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So you got to practice your backups. You got to be comfortable with your backup, and you got to be able to perform like a rock star on it. And to me, a cell phone with Spotify just isn't cutting it as a permanent solution. So
totally
I agree.
And definitely staging the stuff, like for me, first dance, I pre-stage that emergency file when I do dance segment. I have actually Lean Back as my go-to because it starts off, has that intro on it. So just like Rachel said, if there's some immediate cutoff, people are like, what? And the next thing you know, you started with an intro and people are going to get hyped up from that. So it saves you a little bit from that, that particular.
They think it was planned.
Right. Like you trolled them or something, right? Yes. Yeah, that was the plan the whole time, right? Absolutely.
You folks have been wonderful tonight. Is there anything that you would like to add before we close this out? We gear this particularly for the newcomer as well as, seasoned people that can learn something. Anything else you want to add? All right, then.
I'll let Rachel go first.
No, you go, because I want to formulate how I wanted to say this.
People need to get off their high horse with this.
Yes.
This, I'm superior than everything. My brand's superior. It's just like, we're peers in this industry, and we shouldn't be. I
am superior.
Just like you said, Howie. No absolutes here. This shouldn't be.
Brian.
It's like, in the end, we're doing ourselves a disservice when we start rattling our sabers of, Macs are superior, PCs are superior, this is this is that. I mean, we all will have our personal favorites, but that shouldn't color our ideas of when people are asking us questions or for, providing comment. It should be, I might happen to like this, but I see where you're going, as opposed to, no, Max, you only need one, and all that is just ridiculous. And we as a DJ culture really needs to step away from that kind of mentality.
Absolutely. And remember, so DJs in general, because there's a lot of information out there, right? And people are always going to defend their purchases because it's their hard-earned money, and what they use kind of represents their brand. Like, so if they're part of the Apple Serato crowd, you're part of the Denon club, so people are always going to defend what they buy because they never want to admit either they made a bad purchase or, it's what we get very defensive over the things we use. So I have people, I've been using Apple and I've never had a problem. Well, it doesn't mean you're never going to. So you're just, you're not there yet, but that doesn't mean anything. And then when people are talking about, if you look at the stats and number of people reporting, there's underreporting going on. There's people also that don't have their laptops optimized. There's people that do things on their computers that they shouldn't be doing. So even though it's failing, it's not the computer's fault. It's user error and stupidity. And, then they wrap that up in the statistics of the device. And it's like, God, none of this is quantifiable. So at the end of the day, pick your brand, buy what's in your budget, maintain your equipment, and know how to troubleshoot it if something goes wrong, and you'll never go wrong, period, the end, regardless of brand. You know what I mean? That's
Excellent.
it. So,
well,
all right.
Rachel, thank you so much. Lou, always a pleasure. This has been a pleasure. And I want to thank the voice of God, Brian S. Red, for chiming in. And we'll see you folks next week. Thank you so much.